Andrew.
And we are two Canadians who recently purchased a 2009 4500 Kodiak ambulance, and we are in the process of converting it into a super cool, adventure, self-sufficient camper.
So we did a lot of planning and research and finding out exactly what we were looking for. We ended up deciding on a Kodiak 4500 ambulance.
Our ambulances up here are way smaller. Like, I would not be able to stand up straight in one, so we had to look to our neighbors up to the border.
And then once we found the exact ambulance we were looking for in the States, we had to try to find a way to bring it up into Canada, into Ontario, and get it insured, registration, and all that ready to go.
Yeah, so that's what we're gonna make this video about today, is our process of how we got it up here, because it had quite a few steps and sub-steps and hidden costs that we weren't really thinking about. So we have our handy dandy whiteboard here, and we're gonna go through first all of the steps to get it up here, and then we're gonna go through and tell you exactly how much all of the steps cost, and we'll give you our total at the end of what it costs to buy the ambulance and import it into Canada.
All right, so step one is find and buy the vehicle. If you go back and look at our first two videos, we kind of laid out our full process of what we did and all the steps that we took to find our ambulance.
Yeah, so once you've found it and you've bought it, it's time for step two, transportation. So once you buy the ambulance, you have to figure out how to get it from wherever it is in the US up here to Canada. And what we decided to do was work with a freight company to get it put on a truck and trucked actually all the way up here right to our door, because we weren't able to fly down there and drive it back because we wouldn't have plates, we wouldn't be able to get insurance on it until it was already registered in Ontario. So it just seemed like really the easiest and safest thing for us to do was just to pay someone else to transport it for us. And we'll talk about how much that cost in the second half of this video.
Next, step three, export. So we ended up using a customs broker for this. They helped us with all the paperwork we needed. There is a certain form though that has to be at the border 72 hours before you actually come across with your truck.
Yeah, so that's sort of like the key US export form. So just if you're thinking about your timelines, keeping in mind that 72-hour period, so you don't end up getting held at the border because you've only given like 24 hours notice and then you're stuck there for 2 days waiting for this customs form to clear.
Exactly.
So obviously once we've exported, that brings us to step number 4, import. So here we have a few subcategories because the import was a little bit more complicated than the export. So one thing that it's key to line up a little bit ahead of time, if you can, is something called a recall clearance letter. So that's what I have right here. And basically in Canada, you can't import a vehicle if there's any active recalls on it. So you have to contact the vehicle manufacturer and have them provide you with a letter certifying that that vehicle with that VIN number doesn't have any active recalls. And if it does have recalls, you have to get them addressed before you can bring the vehicle into Canada. And with ambulances, there's like an extra twist in that process because you have one manufacturer that did like the truck and the chassis, and then you have chassis, I learned that word from Andrew. Did the truck and the chassis, I used that right, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. And then you have another manufacturer that did like the box, like all of the ambulance components.
Yeah.
So we had to contact GM, who did the Chevy Kodiak chassis, and then we had to contact Road Rescue, who did the ambulance box. And so again, that took like a few days to like a week or so just to get a hold of people and get those letters. And luckily there were no active recalls. So that was a big relief for us because we already had, you know, the forms and the freight company lined up. So, and we'd already bought the ambulance.
Yeah.
So one of those things that if you're thinking ahead, you could prepare for it a little better than we did. Two other things that were involved in the import. One was forms. And this was something that our customs broker took care of for us. We did something called a paperless import, which meant that there were certain forms that we didn't actually have to fill out. We basically gave our customs broker all of the information, copies of the ownership, copies of the agreement of purchase and sale, and they were able to fill in all of those things for us, but you can get the forms online if you're doing it yourself. And the other thing that's really important to note is the original ownership and the agreement of purchase and sale need to be with the truck when it's crossing the border. So just to make sure that that original ownership is in the truck, and if you're not actually going to be there, that whoever it is that is with the truck knows where that ownership is and has that ownership so they can actually make it across the border.
And then once all those forms and everything is done at the border, on to step 5, registration. So Meg was the one who did most of the paperwork in the beginning, so I'll let her start off this round.
And what a fun process it was for me. So one of the first things to do is to get what's called your Registrar of Imported Vehicles inspection, and that is not the same thing as a safety. The safety is a different thing, which Andrew's going to talk about. This is specifically an inspection that you have to do when you import a vehicle, and it's a requirement of the federal government. So there are certain sites around the provinces where there will be someone who's qualified to do one of these inspections. Luckily, they're kind of everywhere. It seems like there's someone at most Canadian Tires who's qualified to do it. But the slight hitch in that is that you have to figure out how to get the vehicle to them to do the inspection. And at this point, you don't have insurance, you don't have plates, you can't legally drive the vehicle, or at least we couldn't legally drive our vehicle in Ontario. So we would have had to have gotten it put back on a truck and taken to Canadian Tire. So we were able to get around that by convincing the guy at Canadian Tire to actually come to us, which seemed like something they don't usually do, but I mean, you might as well ask and just see what happens, and we got lucky. So we would recommend, again, maybe thinking ahead, and you could have your vehicle brought like directly to a Canadian Tire or directly to one of these inspection sites, and that would just save you the cost of that tow.
Yeah, for sure. And then moving on, when we're talking about getting it weighed, the safety and emissions test. Again, for getting it weighed, we couldn't actually drive it around. We didn't have plates or insurance. So the company that we had giving us our safety, they were nice enough to put the dealer plates on and drive it from our house to their yard and get it safety. And then also they went and got it weighed for us also. So that saved us, again, a lot of time putting on a truck and a lot of money that we would have had to spend. Luckily, they were nice enough to do that. And the other one would be the emissions test. Some places you do have to bring it to them, but the guys that we use around here are a mobile service, so they came right to our driveway and did it right in the driveway. You didn't have to drive it anywhere, so.
And that was all really lucky because the Kodiak ambulance is pretty big. When it turned up, it was on the back of like a flatbed, and we actually couldn't get it off the flatbed without the assistance of another truck that was like a specialty tow truck. So it was all a big process, and it would have been really hard to move it around from place to place using a tow truck, because you need an extra big, I don't know, what kind of tow truck was it, Andrew? Do you know?
I don't know, it was a big tow truck, but we'll just cut to a quick montage right here.
Just like that.
So as you can see, that's a hassle. We don't want to be doing that 5 times for 5 different things. We had to do it once because we had to pay for that second tow truck to come. Again, it was a very unexpected cost. We thought we were just going to back it off of the big truck and no problems, but it was actually kind of a pain to do that last minute. So yeah, so the next steps will be insurance and plates.
Right, so I went to Service Ontario, which is like our version of the DMV if you're in America. I went there 3 times to try and get our registration. I had a full binder of documents with me, and every time I was told there was something that I was missing. And so I figured out at Service Ontario that they needed to have proof of my insurance before they would give me my Ontario registration, which is basically like your Ontario ownership. But my insurance company had told me that they wouldn't give me insurance until I had my Ontario registration. So I was kind of struggling with how to sequence those 2 things. And I finally ended up calling my insurance and just telling them, like, this is what Service Ontario has told me. And so they did actually give me the insurance, but again, it wasn't the easiest process. The insurance was pretty expensive, as you'll see when we go through the costs. And I could only find one insurance company that would insure a vehicle like this. So again, really recommend you do your calling around before you buy your vehicle, because it's not as straightforward as just putting insurance on a car. So anyway, I had my insurance in my hands at that point. I was able to go back to Service Ontario with all of these things, and finally, Service Ontario gave me my plates, and they gave me my sticker, and they gave me my registration, and then we were able to we could drive the ambulance. We were fully street legal to drive it around.
Yeah, so it was fun actually driving around after this long process and just weeks of it sitting in the driveway. So
yeah. And so now I think what maybe people are more interested in, and that's how much did this whole process cost? So we're gonna do a really quick lightning round. We're gonna run through all the numbers. So here are our numbers. Some of them are a little bigger than we had anticipated. So first up, what did we pay for our beautiful, beautiful ambulance? So we paid $25,049. That's Canadian dollars.
yeah. Okay, so transportation, so that would have been all the shipping costs, and that's from Chicago, Illinois to Southern Ontario, and that was $4,465.30, plus an additional $141 for that small little tow truck.
Well, big tow truck.
Big tow truck,
actually.
yeah. And keep in mind, that cost is gonna change for everybody. Where your home location is and where the actual ambulance is, or whatever truck you're buying, that number is gonna change, it's gonna be bigger or smaller.
Yeah, we were looking at a couple ambulances that were down in Miami and Texas.
Yeah.
So getting those up here, being like a 20 to 30 hour drive versus a 8-hour drive. So that's obviously was gonna be a huge difference in the freight cost if we bought an ambulance in Texas.
So really, this could make or break you buying it, so.
Yeah, definitely work that into your budget, call some freight companies, get some quotes. I used United States of Freight, that's what we used, and they were lovely to work with, so maybe an idea for someone to contact for a quote. Next up is our step 3 and 4, import and export. We put these kind of together because there were a bunch of different little fees and we didn't want to have to list them all off. But the fee part of it was $778.07. That includes the fees for the forms, the admin fee, and also paying our customs broker. And then obviously we were bringing something into Canada, so we had duty, which is our federal tax. So we paid this, it's a certain percentage of the purchase price. Federal tax, I think, is 7 or 8%, right? It's what?
I don't know. It's
yeah,
one
of the two, and then the provincial tax is the other percent. So that was $1,589.79.
And then after that, it's going to be all registration costs. So if we go just down the list, our special RVI inspection, $367.25. Our taking over the waste bill, so we used the Catskills, and there was $22.
Bargain.
Commercial safety, $110. Our emissions test, $130. And then our insurance is $1,900 a year.
And then there was obviously getting our plates, which was something I was actually happy to pay for because it felt like I've been trying to get them for forever. So that was only $74, so not too bad in the grand scheme of things. But when I bought the plates, I was also paying these two other fees here at the bottom. So this first one of $392 is to get our annual sticker. So it's basically like an annual vehicle registration, I guess is what you might call it. You need that sticker on your license plate to be able to legally drive your car. You have to renew it every year on your birthday. Ours is more expensive than what you would see for like just your regular vehicle that you drive because it's still classified as a commercial truck. So at some point, we'll be trying to convert that from commercial truck into motorhome, and then it will get a bit cheaper, but we can't do that yet because we have to have the conversion done before we can get that switch made on our registration. And now this last fee down here, something us Canadians are known for, and that's some more tax. So this is now the provincial tax on the purchase, and that was $1,953.82.
Love getting taxed.
I know. So now we're gonna erase this whole board and we're gonna give you our big total, unless you guys are really good at math and you already have it added up, but just hold on one second. All right, ready for the final total?
I think so.
Okay. It was $36,974.48. I don't know why I'm saying this like I'm so excited about it, because this is way more, way more than we thought this was gonna cost.
Yeah, so do your planning way in advance, make phone calls, emails, find out everything we had on there, find what your prices are gonna be, or you're gonna be caught with a number that you weren't expecting to pay, so.
Yeah, and don't forget that American to Canadian conversion, because I was not doing that math in my head, or I wasn't doing it right.
And that makes a big difference.
It made a huge difference. This whole time I thought the freight was gonna be like $3,000 and it was almost $5,000.
Yeah.
So do your conversions, do your research, do your budget, and you too can import a Kodiak from the United States.
It's doable.
Yeah. So thank you so much for watching. If you're thinking about doing this or if you have questions, let us know in the comments. We're not experts, we've only done this one time, but we'll give you the benefit of what we learned when we did it. So throw us a comment, and best of luck to you on your hunt for your perfect adventure vehicle.